Hello, this lesson is about making requests. What does making requests have to do with the workplace? Well, the way I think of the workplace is you are headed towards a goal, and even in formulation of that goal, you're making a series of requests that result in agreements. And so it starts with being clear in yourself what your needs are, what your values are, and then those people around you, and then to the extent you're part of the formulation of the goals, depending on where you are in the organization. But then you have goals that are your part in meeting the goals of the larger goals of the organization. And all of those are with, having some kind of agreement. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that making a request of the people, of yourself and the people around you, as opposed to demanding that they do what what you tell them to do, or that someone demands, tells you with the threat of punishment, is going to, in the long run, going to be more effective. It's going to get you more of what you want in the world. It's going to do the same thing for your organization. So what is it that's a request? What am I talking about that's a request? Well, you have to have the distinction between a request and a demand. So a request is not how you say it, it's what you're intending and how it's received. It's how you language it, but there's no magic formula for doing it. The only way you can tell whether you made a demand or a request is if a person, when you've stated your request and they say no or anything other than yes, that you try to punish them either psychologically or emotionally, or you try to punish them physically. So, and if you want to punish, then that's a demand. And so in the cultures that we're in, we get this message that we need to be tough, and we need to tell, we're in a structure, we're in a business, an organization, we get frustrated. You gotta bull your way through, you gotta tell people what to do. Or then the other alternative is just kind of, oh, mate, are you willing? Yeah, okay, please. And I'm not talking about either one of those. I'm talking about being clear with yourself about what you want, and then to communicate that to other people in your work context. And the intelligence of this was incredibly well put by Marshall Rosenberg. And when he said, you can force people to do what you want, often you can force them to do what they want, but not for the reasons that you want them to do it. So a request is you ask someone to do something that you hope will meet your needs and you hope will meet their needs. And what does a request sound like? Well, there's no magic language, as I said, but I can give you some training wheel sentences that will generally result in a request, or at least be received as a request, languaging of a request. And then, of course, people need to trust you over time. If you've been threatening punishment in order to get your way, then it's going to take a while for them to relearn that you're coming at this in a different way. And if you're inconsistent while you're doing it, that's going to really befuddle people, and they're going to withdraw and imagine that you're making demands when you may, in fact, want to be making a request. So what are the training wheel sentences? So if you say, would you tell me, and then put in words, would you, that generally is, results in something that is present tense, action, language, and doable. And likewise, if you say, would you be willing to blah, 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 that one is not so certain to produce request language, but if you then add these concepts of present tense, doable, and action language, then you can test whether it's a request. And then also, if you are self-aware and do a debrief with yourself and look back and say, did I want to punish this person when they said no? And then we have a part of this training, which goes to this idea of, what do I do when I hear someone say no? How can I not just walk away when someone says no, but in fact engage in them in a way that attempts to mediate, to meet their needs, meet your needs, and to try to find a way, a strategy that would meet both your needs. Demands, requests, there are certain times when demands are the structure of demands kind of fit in. So for instance, firefighters, they go to a fire, there's a fire captain, there's a one person in charge, and that person is telling people what to do. And they're not sitting around making sure that this person is, saying, is this something that you're willing to do? No, it's like, but they have a prior agreement, and they have systems in place to give feedback afterwards. And they have a code of self-responsibility for each of those fire people that they will follow the instructions, but they will ascertain moment by moment if this is something they can do that's safe for others. There are limits or parameters to the demand. And then your concern may be, won't it take too long to make requests instead of demands? I sort of have a flip answer to that, but it's also a very truthful answer, is in the moment, it may seem to be shorter to demand somebody do it, but you're going to pay for it and there's going to have a tail on it, and you're not going to like that tail, I predict. So yes, it may seem like it's shorter, but in the long run, or even in the medium term, it's much more effective to get agreement from people, and then you enlisted their engagement and their enthusiasm, and you're likely to get a better result. And then are there times when it might be okay to make a demand? Well, that's something that you have to decide in a moment by moment situation. So this is when might you choose to use emotional physical force? The easy example that was given by Rosenberg was of the 2-year-old running into the street. You grab the 2-year-old and you don't have a discussion with them if they're, when there's in the face of an onrushing car. But there are other situations that we can imagine where I'm not a pacifist. I'm willing to use force to protect my family, those I love, and the people in my community. But I want to use, I have criteria for that. I want to use it only when I can't think of any other way to meet the needs of the people involved. And I want to protect those threatened, but I also want to protect to the extent I can the person who is doing the threatening. And I want to use as little force as possible. And when I use whatever I'm calling force, I want to I want to not be angry, and I don't want to try to punish this other person. So I want to be clear, and I want to do as much as I can before I pull the trigger on being angry. I mean, on being making a demand, and I want to check with myself: am I doing this out of a desire to punish, or am I angry? So I've already talked to you about how you can tell whether you've made a demand, and that's how you react to someone saying no. And I've also discussed it, present tense and action language. So let me describe a little bit about that. Present tense means this is what I want you to do now. It's not what I wish you, obviously what I wish you had to have done in the past. That's something else, but that's not making a request. And for the future, a person really, when you think about it, cannot guarantee that they're going to do something in the future. But you can ask them a series of questions, but you can also use a shorthand. You want to go to the movie with me? And they say yes. And so then you work out what movie you go to, you work out all sorts of stuff. So you haven't really made the agreement at the point at which, and you haven't made a request in this kind of detailed sense of it. But as a practice, you can look at present tense, meaning what can you say to me now, or what can you do now that will indicate to me that you would like to go to that movie with me? So, the specific movie, the specific time at a specific movie theater, is this something that you would like to do now when you think about it? Is there anything that you can imagine that would get in the way of you doing that? And are you willing to tell me at the earliest date? Now, you don't want to do that for every single kind of thing, but that's the kind of mental process to be clear about that you're asking for something that's present tense. Then the other thing is action language. You want your request to be what you want, not what you don't want. Now, that doesn't exclude saying what you don't want. I would prefer that you not talk so loud. Would you be willing to talk at the same level that I'm at? Or, when you talk as loud as you're talking, my ears hurt. And are you willing to talk at the same level I'm talking to you at right now? So, action language, you want to include the action language, but also it's often helpful for clarity reasons to tell the person what you don't want. And then finally, you want doable. So doable is that someone can actually do it, and that you can know they've done it and they can know they've done it. So one of the typical examples of this is, would you show me you love me? Well, now that depends upon what I interpret as demonstrations of love. And there's the book, The 5 Languages of Love, and other things. But so what I might do to demonstrate love is when I come home at night from my work, when I was going out and not in quarantine. But so bear with me on my example. When I come home at night, are you willing to pause long enough to give me a hug and to ask me about my day, and to just touch my arm, a little bit, and just seem to express some interest in what my experience has been, and I would like to do the same to you, reciprocate to you. So that would be an example. Or would you come sit on the couch, and would you scratch my head lightly, what the Brazilian Portuguese call cafuné? Would you do that? And just for about 30 seconds or a minute, just as a kind of way to help me relax. And I would interpret that as love. So those are my kind of corny examples. So in summary, ask yourself, am I stating this as a request and not a demand? So be clear that your intention, that you're not angry and your intention is not to punish. And then and then that you have it in request language, even though I said there wasn't any magic language, you want to phrase it as a request. And is it present tense? Is it action language? And is it doable? Now, let me talk a little bit about requests. There are three kinds of requests. There's the two process requests, and there's an action language request, an action request. And the process request there are two of those, and one of them is you're trying to find out whether the other person has heard you the way you want. And the training wheel sentence for this is, would you tell me what you heard me just say? So you don't want to say that, exact phrase. That's not what I'm saying you should use. But again, you speak into the other person's listening, and you can say it in all sorts of ways. But you're just trying to find out, were you heard by them giving you a reflection of saying to you what they heard. Now, even if you say, that to someone and they say, yeah, I heard that you think I'm an ass, like an ass or a jerk or an impossible person to be around. That's very valuable, because now you have the opportunity, assuming that's not what you intended, you have the opportunity to clarify and modify your request. So whatever they say back is valuable information for your communication to create and to navigate towards connection. So that's about, did they hear you? And then the other one is, how are they feeling having heard you? What has been the physiological reaction that they've had to the hearing of this? And a lot of this is unconscious, the non-verbal part of ourselves. And so you ask them, and again, if they tell you what they're thinking instead of what they're feeling, that's still valuable information. You can interpret from that information. And this is a way of measuring the quality of the connection between you and the other person. So those are the two process requests. And then there's the action requests, and that's, that subsumes all these other requests where you're asking a person to open up the window, or are they willing to get their report on a certain time, or are they willing to accept a delay in the delivery of the report, and so on. Now, the kinds of agreements that result from action requests are the primary agreement. That's what you're asking for. Or not, do they agree to it, or after mediating, do you get to, okay, I agree the report's due on a certain time, it's going to cover certain materials, it's, so on and so on. So that's what I call a primary agreement. But then once you reach the primary agreement, you can have a supporting agreement and a restoring agreement. The supporting agreement, or agreements, are agreements between the parties that will increase the likelihood that the primary agreement is going to be kept. So for instance, it might be as simple as, I'll put that in my agenda, or my calendar, my date book, so that, I'll keep track of it, or and then you can imagine, you can create, massive structures of supporting agreements depending upon the context. And then finally, of the three kinds of agreements is a restoring agreement. And that's in the situation where you plan now for what you're going to do if the agreement is not kept. So that's a restoring agreement. And in ongoing relationships between people, whether it's intimate or work or some sort of collegial colleague situation, the restoring agreement is a really powerful tool to navigate and to improve and strengthen. It's like you can try things out, and then you can have an assessment. You can say, I'd like to change the agreement like this and like that. And you can, be modifying the primary agreement when things haven't been haven't been executed as you anticipated it when you made the primary agreement. Okay, I'm just checking to see whether I've said everything I want to say to you. And the answer is yes. So this concludes the lesson on making requests. Thank you for your time and attention. And I look forward to seeing you again.